Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Long-Term Adult Care Workshop. To give you a little bit of background, this workshop came out of the fact that we hear from parents time and again that they're absolutely overwhelmed about what the transition process will look like when their child becomes an adult, not just for medical care, but what will daily life look like, what should I be doing for future planning, etc. So the point of the workshop, we'll have some presentations. We're going to hear from some families who are in different stages of transition, but we really want this to be an open dialogue. We're sharing some documents with you in a booklet that are initial drafts for resources that we're hoping to build out further for our community. So we would really welcome any feedback today, or if you get home and think of anything else, if you could let us know. We want to make sure that we come up with something that's the most useful for all of our families. So with that, and to mention too, you do have the postcards that are on your table were in your registration packets, but we do have 3 surveys that are geared towards the needs of adults. So we would really encourage you to complete them if you haven't. Feel free to grab a card if you've lost yours or can't find it. And then with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kathy Dodd, who spoke earlier, and she's going to talk about what daily life looks like for her daughter after high school.
Okay, I think a bunch of you met me earlier, but just in case, I'm Kathy Dodd. I'm the mom of Stacy Dodd, who is age 24. Stacy was diagnosed with Dravet in, I think, 2006, and definitely has all the characteristics of a traditional Dravet adult. She's now living at home with us, and we're starting to kind of plan for her movement or transition to hopefully a residential program. She turned 22 right kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, so her journey has been a little bit more challenging just because when she turned 22 was at the time that, in 22 in the state of Illinois, I apologize, is when you move out of educational entitlement, and at the time that she did that, there weren't really any day programs available to her, so we've been through a journey of finding things to keep her busy and keep her active and keep her to continue to learn and things like that. Our long-term plan at this point, although everything is just a plan and it gets continually readjusted, our long-term plan actually for Stacy is to move her to a residential campus community. It's an organization called Misericordia. It's based out of Chicago. We live in a neighborhood, a suburb of Chicago. It's a full spectrum of adults with disability. So they have a skilled nursing facility for the very significantly and medically fragile kids, adults, things like that. Some parents move their child into that at a very, very young age. They have, and they've just recently opened up an aging facility for their adults that are getting older and have started to develop dementia and things like that. They have a number of, they have a very large Down syndrome population, and one of the, that's early onset dementia is a very big issue for adults with Down syndrome. They have a variety of residential options. They have homes in the community. They have homes on campus, and then they have apartments that adults live somewhat independently. And so, today we're going to really talk about, as Marianne said, just helping parents think about the transition to adulthood and what that might look like for their individual young adult. And so we thought it would be helpful. You'll hear from the rest of these. So this is just Stacy's path. And I think I shared this earlier, but there's a lot of people in the room here, including these 3 wonderful women on the panel, that have obviously a different path and a different journey. And I think, the one thing I'd say is your journey is your own journey, and it's very personal. And it's okay that what one person's doing is not what you think is right. It's okay if, you're not comfortable putting your child in a residential setting, or you're not comfortable putting them in a daycare program, or whatever that could possibly be. And you really need to create this journey for what's going to work for you and your family. And we're here just to share kind of how we got to that place, but that doesn't mean that that's the right place for each of you. So, and this schedule is put together because for me, my biggest challenge with Stacy is she wants to be active or doing something all the time. She, as soon as we get in the door from going someplace, she's like, I want to go. And she goes and gets me the keys and brings them to me. And so the pandemic was incredibly hard for us. I mean, we went on a lot of just car rides. She loves to be in the car. She loves to listen to music. She's a big singer, so we'll play the radio very loud. She loves to go to the grocery store. So this schedule is just pretty active because that's what she wants. She does have many obsessive behaviors, and her big thing is she obsesses over Halloween. So we go to the store and buy candy about every day. And she doesn't eat candy, but we buy it. So anyways, and she would love to just trick or treat, basically, and go to people's door, get candy every single day of the year. So we laid this out Monday through Friday, obviously. This is just typical of what you'd have for a school schedule, and I'm not going to go through all of it. I thought I'd just share with you guys a couple of, unique or different things we did, because it just kind of shows the expansion of the kinds of programs you could think about for your adult. So she goes to a community day program, which is right in our community right now. It's actually not the day program that if she goes into her residential facility, they have their own day program, and right now she's not going to that day program for a variety of reasons. But this is one right in our community. I'm from the north side, and we're lucky enough that we can walk her to there. So, and then she goes bowling with we have a great special rec program in our community, so it's called North Suburban Special Rec Association, so she goes bowling with them on Monday afternoons. And then she goes to her community day program most of the day on Tuesday from 9 to 3 roughly. On Wednesday, she only goes in the morning, and then she has a volunteer job that she does where we have a local coffee shop that we buy our coffee to, and they actually they roast their own coffee beans, and then people order those beans, and they have some scones and some really specific kinds of bakery items, so people can order them online. And then during the pandemic, they started to deliver them, and so Stacy and I deliver them to people's homes in the community. And so she does, to me, that's a really good example of a job that she does that's not independent, but it is something that gets her out. And it's right up her alley because she's ringing the doorbell and giving people coffee. Now, she also sometimes asks for candy, but that's a separate issue. And actually, in the summertime, we have her doing that with a high school peer of hers. So Stacy she went to high school and grade school in our local community in our schools. So she was not in she was in a self-contained special ed classroom, but she was often included with other typical peers, and so we are blessed that she has a lot of typical peer friends that do things with her. And so right now, one of her college friends is doing the volunteer job with her. And then she has another volunteer job this is basically an automobile shop that does, fixes your car. But she goes there and she cleans up at the end of the day, she empties the waste baskets, she puts out the coffee and the tea, and puts out the cups and wipes. She's not doing these independently, and some days she goes there and won't do it at all. So I don't want to give the impression, well, she just won't. I don't know what more to say. But they are okay with that, but she needs to go there with a job coach, and she needs to be obviously at a place where they are comfortable if she's having a bad day or whatever. So they don't rely on her. Let me say that. If she had a seizure that day, we just call them, and so none of these jobs are pain. Let me be clear on that. And then on Thursday she goes to her community day program, and then in the afternoon she goes to a choir. She loves to sing. I think I shared that. And so she goes to a choir through our special rec program for an hour or two in the early evening, and that's probably one of her favorite programs of the entire week. And then on Fridays is her home day. And I think I shared earlier that, you can have a mix of day program and home programs, and, my preference would be for Stacy to be in a day program 5 days a week, but she's really not able to do that. She needs a little bit more support than they are able to provide her at her day program, and so they'll be like, Fridays they have staff training and things like that, so because they're lower on staff, she's not able to go. So these are the things we do. She spends her morning with me, and we go work out. That's not to say she loves it, but And then we do we have Stacy needs a consistent routine. She needs a consistent schedule. So we try to keep that somewhat consistent. So then she goes to horseback riding in the afternoon. So that's hippotherapy. She loves that. And then she goes to a Friday night social program again with our special rec program. So that's a program that a number of her peers or her other friends who have a disability go to that Friday night program as well. So she knows many of the participants there, and she's been going to this kind of Friday night social for a really long time, and she loves it because it's like going out on Friday night like her older siblings are doing. So I hope that was helpful. I don't know, Marianne, if there's anything else you think I should add, but again, this was just one. I think the rest of the panelists will share a little bit about their experience and what they have them doing. So thank you.
And we'll just go ahead and we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves and tell kind of what their current situation is as well as the age of their child.
Okay, hi, I'm Janice Stanley. My daughter is 22 years old and her name's Emily. And I also have a son with Down syndrome who's 18. I just say that because he actually has provided me with a bunch of information from his support groups and all that. So I've gotten a lot of information from both organizations. So Emily was in the transition program after high school during the COVID years. And so when she was probably 20, we took her out of the online learning. She was not doing well trying to communicate on a computer with people. And so she just shut off the computer. So we took her out of that. And then we're in the situation that most people are in. I have been researching day programs and residential programs for several years. And so in my area, what I found for day programs were everything from like a workplace where they go in and they do like, they sit at a table and they, put hangers of different colors and buckets and different things like that. There's all sorts of different programs. The one issue I had at the time was that they didn't provide nursing, or what they provided was the program ran from 9 to 3, but the nursing was available 10 to 2, that kind of thing. So actually the nice thing about Emily is her seizures have greatly declined, so I took that leap of faith as a parent and decided I'm just going to put her in a program, and if she has a seizure that's longer than 5 minutes, they'll have to call the ambulance. And so that was a big deal for me because that has never happened in her life. So I researched, and the program that was in my area is a life program. They went 2 days a week from like 9 to 2, and you had to be able to function with a 1:4 to 1:5 ratio. And you could have no behavioral challenges and no, so basically the program that was available where I lived was not available to Emily. My son Tommy, he would be great. Oh, I'm sorry. But I found a program in a neighboring town, and it's called a Choice Program, and it's part of a Northwest Suburban Recreation Association, so a special rec program. And basically they had us, it was a very long process. Another problem that we're gonna have as adults with Dravet syndrome is they're selective in who they take in the day program. It's very competitive. It's like applying for college for your other kids. So you apply, and then you go through interview processes, and then we had a month-long trial period in which my daughter somehow managed not to hit anyone until the day after she was accepted into the program. So, yeah. And if those of you who know me know Emily, her greatest challenge is her behavior. She has been hitting me every day for 5 or 6 years now. Screaming, crying, having fits. And last year we actually lowered her ONFI, and her behavior has been better than it's ever been, or she'd never be in any program. So, I mean, that's going to be a challenge for people with behavioral issues. They're not going to be able to get into the programs, and there's not a lot out there, and it's competitive. So anyway, her program is great. She goes Tuesday to Friday. She can go all 5 days, but I started her at 3, and now I've moved her to 4. She goes 9:30 to 2:30, and it's called a Choice Program. So they go in, and some days they do a full program for everyone, and they all do the same thing where they like go out in the community, they go to a baseball game, or they go to somewhere and do volunteer work, that kind of thing. Other days they stay on site and they have choices. So Emily can choose, do you want to feed the turtles today, or do you want to do crafts today? So they give them choices. And they also have goals, which is really nice. And one of my goals is to make Emily choose things she doesn't normally choose, because she will sit and color all day long if you let her, kind of thing. And so that was a challenge. The other great thing about this particular program is they have her moving. And, for at least 15 years, we've been stopping her from moving because she'd have those heat-related seizures. And so now that her heat-related seizures are less, I'm letting this program say, yeah, let her walk, let her run, let her do whatever, and let's push that threshold and see. And so far, it's been wonderful. She hasn't really had any additional seizures. So over the summer, I put her in after day programs. So they actually take her from 9:30 to 2:30, and then at 2:30 they bus her to a different program, and she stays till 6:30. Best thing ever. And so Tuesday she does arts and socialization, and on Thursday she does gym class, or like exercise program, and swimming. Again, it's amazing. So I have that 4 days a week. I'll probably increase it to 5 days a week, because unlike Stacy, Emily will sit in a chair all day long if you let her. You really need to get her moving. And part of it is because we've made her sit in a chair for so many years, because her heat sensitivity was pretty high. Okay, and then on Sundays, we put her in a Challenger baseball program, which is a local program. And she has a buddy and they play baseball. And then on Sunday nights, I started a program for adults 18 and older. It's a bowling club, and it's for families. And so we have families of all different disabilities come to a bowling alley. They gave us a reduced rate. And it's not a drop-off program, which a lot of parents really tried to get me to take their kids, along with my two, and like do a, additional child care or whatever. But it's been wonderful, because the one challenge that I've always had over all the years is the privacy laws for our children or young adults. I don't know who the kids are in my kids' classroom. Unless Emily can come home and tell me that I like Bobby and he has cerebral palsy, I don't know Bobby. And with the COVID, I know less and less, because we used to go to a class function or something and get to meet the kids. So another challenge. But anyway, I just wanted to note too that I've been through everything. So I've done guardianship, Social Security, school transition, special needs trust, Medicaid waiver. I've looked into like dependent adult child stuff. So I have information if anyone wants to talk about any of those topics, but it's not really what we're doing tonight, but I just want to let you know.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen Penwell, and I live in Madison, Wisconsin, with my husband. I have 3 kids. My youngest, Murphy, is actually here and has been very involved in the adult sibling program, so that's super cool. And our middle daughter, Grace, is 24, and she has Dravet, and then our oldest is almost 26, and she lives in Pennsylvania working. I'll touch on sort of where we are currently, because we all come at this from a different spot. And I just feel like it's so important to acknowledge the fact that, everybody is at a different point in this journey, and that the journey is so different depending upon what state you live in, what county you live in, and the resources that might be available to you. So when, I rattle off stuff that Grace does, I'm fully acknowledging that I get it that some places don't offer that. I also acknowledge that where your child is developmentally makes such a big difference in what they might or might not be able to do, and you as parents do. Just as a point of reference, Grace developmentally is about age 5, so she's very verbal, she doesn't read, she's very active. She graduated from high school and went in Wisconsin. They have the 18 to 21 program, which is really focused on independent living skills and job training. And so by the time you're finished with your with your 18 to 21 program, the goal goal is that you'll have a vocational agency identified and that they will have some jobs in place for her. And that did happen. And it was right before, it was in 2019. 2020. So Grace's jobs varied. Grace is very social, but her jobs were more sort of rolling napkins at a restaurant or setting up some dishes at a senior living place, which was all fine, and it had some social components. But I think as a family, we all were kind of like, does this, crack the nut for her? COVID happened, and we call it in our family one of the bright spots because Grace was home, devastating for everybody, as we all have shared and we know and lived it. We always thought, gosh, could we do something working with her vocational agency to create something that's a better fit for her? So we created, with their support, Gracie's Goodies. So Grace has her own business, and it's a little snack delivery business, and she serves probably 15 different customers, and I can tell anybody details about it. We did get a lot of pushback from the vocational agency about kind of how it didn't fit their norms. And so that's another message to everybody, that just try to push as much as you can to get people to try things, because, I think as parents, we've been living this for a long time, and so we're kind of problem solvers, and that can carry, especially with Dravet, where it's not a typical. Those same skills can carry over to things like, vocational things. So Grace gets picked up every day at 8:30 by her job coach. She actually works, I think, a lot more than a lot of folks do. She gets dropped off at 2:45, and she's very busy with other activities as well, like she's in a little theater group and a Special Olympics and things like that. And she's very social. And then the other really huge thing that has been we call it our science project for the last 2+ years, is it really getting into how can we try having Grace live away from home with obvious lots of supports. And so we created a parent group of like-minded parents, and I can tell you tons and tons of information. So if anybody wants to seek me out after, I'm happy to share more. But as of August of last year, Grace moved into a 4-plex apartment building, so 4 2-bedroom apartments. There's 7 women, all with intellectual disabilities, ranging in age from 24 to mid to late 30s, developmentally from 5 to maybe 16. And with varying levels of support based on who the woman is. A lot of shared supports where possible. I think I was talking to Mary Ann, it has not been for the faint of heart. It has been, again, this is not all of our first rodeo. We've all been living really hard things. This has been really something. However, it's been equally awesome. It has been a great source of comfort, I think, for our other kids to know that we're starting this process. And if there's a single message that I would share to folks who have younger kids or in the transition process, it's just start the process, because there are several parents in Grace's living situation who are, I like to think that I'm really young with my gray hair, but I know, but they're a lot older than me. And I think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could handle that. So is it going to be perfect? No. Is it perfect for our typical kids? They're not going to probably live in the same place their whole life. They'll have different roommates. The same kind of rule applies to our kids with disabilities. So anything you can do, and the resources vary so much from, as I said, from city and state to state. But doing things like just pick one thing. Start SSI. Okay, got that done. Start guardianship. Okay, got that done. We have an organization called Love Inc., and they put on workshops, one of which is called Fearless Futures. And it's really creating the space for you as a parent to create kind of the Bible on your kid. So if you vanish tomorrow, here is, everything about your child that would need to, they would need to know. And again, looking at our other kids, that's what we want to do and have for them, because that it's hard for us, and we don't want to put that on. We want to help our other kids as much as we can. So that's kind of a different bent on some of the information that's been shared. We've gone through a lot of the transition programs, so I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of that as we move forward.
Hi, I'm Claire Carey, and I'm from Boise, Idaho, where I live with my husband, Michael, and Alexis, who's 17 and has Dravet Syndrome, and Calvin, 16, and Alanis, 12. And I'm the new kid on the block, so I don't have much to say. I'm here to kind of learn like all of you. But I would just say that if you're sitting here thinking, I haven't done any of this, like, don't worry, because I'm at the very beginning and my daughter's 17, and we've done some. Right around 16, her care coordinator at a pediatric visit came in and sort of gently started these conversations, which I was not aware of what was coming down the road, and so it was good. I really like Kathy's analogy that she gave earlier, if you were at that talk, where she said you're kind of just planning for a trip, and you're just, you're not jumping in and you know what you're going to do every day of your vacation, but you've just started, thinking about where you might want to go, looking into the options. And I kind of feel, I was at that stage maybe when she turned 16, where I was just getting some information and kind of getting familiar with these terms, and not thinking about placement and just, where we were going to be, just at the very beginning of what transition was going to look like. Now I feel like we're at the point where, we're purchasing tickets and we know what hotel we're going to stay at, but we're still not there, and there could be lots of changes between here and there. But she will age out of school at 21 in Idaho, and so I feel like we're in a good spot. Like, I'm here now, I'm going to learn a lot, and I'm just grateful to have all these experts here. So that's all I have to offer at this point.
You give it to Kathy. Oh.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one thing just before I forget and for later. It is really important to think about guardianship at 18, though, because then you can talk to people when they're 18. Because if you don't get guardianship, then I have to get Emily or Tommy on the phone to talk to Social Security when I'm trying to get it. And I'm serious. You think I'm kidding? Or for a medical, like most people have maybe a medical thing going on, but really think about guardianship because it's super important. You can't really do it too much ahead of time. You have to wait until they're almost 18, then you get a court date and stuff like that. But don't wait too long for that, I would say.
So I'm going to turn this back to Kathy. One of the things you have on the table is our preliminary draft of a checklist to kind of help you start that transition process. And this is one of the things I talked about. We would love to have feedback, either for people who are new that you might not understand pieces of it, or if there's anything that you've been through the process that you think would be helpful. But I'll let her go with that.
Is this on? Yes. Okay, great. So this is your travel book. So thank you, Claire, for saying that I was going to reiterate my analogy about planning for a trip, but you did it for me. So, but anyways, this is basically a start and a draft of kind of a checklist to help parents think about the journey. We are looking for feedback from many of you who have gone through the journey, and also looking for feedback from those of you who are starting the journey. I do think the things to think about here are, one, every state is different in terms of their terminology, their eligibility, the program options they have. And your community is very different. And so this, we tried to be as generic as possible. There are some things that some states require and other states do not. There are some, so it's, if you don't understand something, feel free to ask. But this hopefully will get you started. And it's, I think we started the journey. I think the first, it's like we started at freshman year, which is, age is different too. So we tried to do like age, grade, year, just because everybody's kids are different. I actually held Stacy back for a year, but so anyways, it's just intended to kind of be a guide. So, and we'll probably spend some more time on that today or later when we have the sessions. We're kind of deviating here a little bit, which I think is okay because your stories were so relevant, and thank you, everybody. So I'm going to just talk really briefly on program options, if you could bring that up. And these ladies actually really shared their perspectives very well, so thank you. So if you go to the next, I have the ability to do it. I forgot. Oops. So I think we spoke about some of these this morning, but these are just in a little more detail in terms of what to be thinking about for community day programs, what to be thinking about for home-based day programs. And I thought, Janice's example was really a great one about, thinking about what these different programs are and what they support. So, the things to be thinking about are is it community-focused, vocational-focused, or in-house? So for some of us, a vocational focused isn't really the best thing. Either the skill sets are too low or too high, or you just don't think your child could do it. So I think, I said my daughter right now is in a day program that I think is too vocational focused for her. And she's struggling in that program, and it is clear to us, but right now we don't have any options. That's the other thing, is your options limit you to what you can do. So you're not necessarily always going to find the perfect fit the first time. So we talked about educational, the focus on continued learning skills. So, for some, having them start to focus on things where maybe eventually they could do a job, or at least make their own meals, or dress themselves, or there's just a variety of things. Go to the store and get the things they want from the market or whatever. And then I think we talked, the others have come up through the different discussions of everybody. And then home-based day programs. Actually, somebody gave me some good feedback about this a little bit, because we talked about, starting at home days and eventually transitioning to community day programs. So these home-based day programs would be, you're bringing the programming into your home, or at least you're managing the program from the home. So that doesn't mean you might not be doing something. So Stacy right now has a mix of these, but if you're doing a home-based day program, that means you're designing and kind of managing it yourself, and it's actually the power of that is it's pretty customized to your child. And then you could do things like therapy and music and fitness and a lot of things, and you can bring pet training in, and there's just a variety of things that you can bring into your home that are really exciting and beneficial to your child. Okay. And then these are other things, and I really liked how everybody shared just kind of some of the different kinds of vocational and volunteer opportunities that they're doing. And so these are just listed here. The thing to be really thinking about when you're considering programming for your son or daughter is, where do you go where they already know her or him? So if you're always if they have a favorite restaurant and you're going there every week, every morning for breakfast or something, they're probably a great place to ask, hey, could, Stacy come in and roll, silverware, or after breakfast, could she come and wipe the tables? Really, I think we don't realize how connected our children are in the communities they live. And those connections are power and a great way to make things, happen that they enjoy. And like I said, I share that Stacy goes to this Heart Auto. You know, honestly, she doesn't do a lot of work, but they love her coming in. And she likes to go there because there's like, hi, Stacy, hi, Stacy. And then she goes and, you know, greeting the people who are coming to pick up their cars. And so, and it, you know, that's because that's where we take our cars. So that's how they know her. And for many of us, our child is with us pretty much right by her right hip every day. So wherever we're going, they're going. So these are just different examples: a local store, a coffee shop, a retail store, a restaurant. They could be a greeter. They could do dog walking. Some of these you would do with them. I'm not saying, you know, pet sitting. You and your, you know, son or daughter could go, you know. But those are still things that they feel they're doing. I mean, you're trying to find ways for them to feel responsible and proud of what they're doing. You know, for those of you who have religious institutions, you know, if you're going to church or synagogue every week, there's great opportunities potentially there. And then many of the other panelists here recommended recreational things, so bowling, art, music, dance, choir. There's just a plethora. I mean, we're coming up here making it seem like there's a plethora of options. We know it's really, really difficult, so I sure don't want to be up here thinking, oh, look at all this you can do, wow, wow, wow. But it just, you know, again, it's like if you're looking at a book and all the places you can go visit when you're going on a trip or going to visit a city, and you might pick out one or two. So these are just intended to kind of help everybody kind of be creative or help you get your juices flowing about things that might work for your individual son or daughter. Do you guys want to add anything to that? Okay, great. Sorry, I should have done that sooner, and I apologize.
No, that's okay. So the scariest thing I think of all, and maybe because I have the oldest kid, but so I could not imagine not having Grace right next to my side. I couldn't. I mean, she was completely, we were her care providers. And it took years of practice to make it so that, okay, there are other people along the way. You know, it's kind of like when you hopefully along the way had a special ed person or somebody that was a good support person. Try over time as they get older, there are support groups and there are care providers that you can get. I know some people are so medically fragile, and it might not ever be the case for some, but perhaps try for your own sake to make it so that, you know, maybe they can be away from you a little bit.
So I agree with everything Colleen said. So one thing I would have all of you consider, especially if you have not yet, if your child is not yet kind of moving into adulthood, is consider sending them to an overnight camp. Okay, that's the first, but, you know, or a weekend overnight. That's a great, first of all, I think you're going to feel really refreshed when they're gone for 24 hours, but
You're going to feel like it's going to be a failure. You're going to think there is no possible way that this is going to work, and then it does, sometimes. I mean, you're going to think that it's going to be a total bust and that there is zero chance that your kid will ever be able to do that. And you might be really pleasantly surprised that it actually works, and it's pretty cool for both the kid and your other kids and your family.
Okay, after that happy note, here's a downer. Who's going to pay for it? And how are they going to get there? Because when you're in transition and you're in school and you have all these special Olympics and all that, the school covers all that. You're in all those programs are all paid for. You get out of transition and guess what? You have to get them to any program you find for them, or they have to get there themselves, and you have to pay for it. So unless you're on a Medicaid program or something and you're lucky enough to get that before they turn 18 and not have to wait on a waiting list for several years to get money for programming, you have to think about that. How are you going to pay for the programs that they're in? And most states, or a lot of them, seem to be really good. Illinois, not so much. So that's just something you have to keep in your mind, that all of a sudden your support network that you've had all along is gone. And it's gone like boom the day you leave transition. And over COVID, it was really difficult because things weren't even open to put anyone in and those kind of things. So for Emily, it was very difficult. But I'm just putting that in your mind. Sorry.
No, that's great, and we have to have the positives and the negatives. So we were going to open up questions from the audience for about 5 minutes. If you would like to hear from any of the panelists, just go ahead and raise your hand. I'll come to you with the mic.
Yeah, I had a question, probably for any of you that have your kids in the day programs. As far as especially Janice, with your daughter, how about like supervision-wise? Is the ratio, does she have a one-on-one, or is it one person per couple of the participants kind of thing?
Well, actually, there's been such a transition from me because, like I said, she had a one-on-one nurse at everything for her whole time in high school, including all of her extracurricular activities. The nurse went with her. So I was really spoiled. And I could not find a program that was not super babysitting like, where they just sat in a room and somebody watched them constantly, that would provide that level of care. She's actually in a 1-to-4 ratio, and Emily does pretty good following along, and it's actually been really good for her, but it took a real leap of faith. And they have no medical care at the facility, so like I said, if they have a seizure, they have to call the ambulance. But again, you have to,
Okay.
trust that she's going to be okay, and they're going to call and do what they need to do.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add on that, just because Stacy's day programming is also 1-to-4. And I think I shared that she can't go to that day programming all the time, and that's because there are some places where they feel she would need more than 1-to-4 support, maybe even 1-to-1. And so for those reasons, she is limited, and so if they want to go to community and then all of a sudden she doesn't want to go into the store, she will basically not go in the store. And so, those are factors to consider. But I agree with Janice that it's very, very hard to find a 1-to-1 day program that's not, might not provide all the things that you would want.
And since she said that, the nice thing about Emily's program is that they reserved a wheelchair spot for her. So when they go out in the community, they have someone pushing her in her wheelchair. So they do allow her to go on all the activities, because the higher functioning kids might be in the 1-to-4 ratio with her, but that person is pushing Emily. And so she's really got the 1-to-1 care in a way when they're outside of the building. And then inside the building, she really doesn't need it as much. So.
Actually, I have the mic, so I get to talk now. Actually, this question is probably more for Mary Ann. First of all, I want to commend the Dravet Foundation on this wonderful transition to adulthood planning guide. It's one of the many, many things that the foundation has come up with to make our lives easier. I wondered how this correlates with the Zogenics Project.
So we have been really fortunate in the last few years. One of the things that industry does do for our community is they offer educational funding for projects like this. And so Zogenics had kind of started this, and we'll hear a little more later from the sibling group, with the idea of not only do we need to know what steps to transition our children, but what do we do about when we're gone? Who's going to handle their care management, even if they're not living with them? So they're loosely tied together. And we're hoping to build all of the steps that will allow parents kind of go from A to Z in that planning.
You were talking about if she has a seizure, they have to call 911. If there isn't a nurse with them when she has how would they know? How does that work?
Well, Emily's seizures are pretty much hemiconvulsive, and then they generalize. So it's pretty obvious that she's having a seizure. She does have some myoclonics occasionally, but those just are a matter of seconds, so we don't have any preventative measures for those as well. But so she doesn't get emergency medicine, so that's the other thing. But Emily hasn't required it in 5 years, and so most of her life, I never allowed her to go to like a special camp without me. So every summer for most of her life, I went to camp with her every day. So she could have that opportunity. I didn't participate. I went to a different room, but I was available to have that nasal midazolam or Diastat or whatever at the time administered. So I really don't know what to tell people who still need those emergency meds, and I know you do. There are those programs that a lot of them are 9 to 3 and the nurse is there 10 to 2. But they really are programmed for the nurse being there to give those lunchtime meds, you know, the everyday meds that people take. They be there for seizure care. So in those cases, you can have your adult there from 10 to 2, but it really limits them as far as, you know, the options of where they, you know, unfortunately, there's not great solutions for our kids right now. And I didn't mention earlier, but as far as housing options, that's one of my biggest concerns about Emily. I found some great options for housing for the future for her, but they don't provide nighttime supervision. As far as like I'm concerned, Emily needs to be monitored all night long, and nobody does that. They have long-term care facilities or like intermittent nursing facilities, and they would be great because they do have more monitoring, but the average age is 60. I mean, the beginning age is 60. I haven't found any with younger people. And so, yes, I can do that eventually, but in the interim, so every program that I've found, the program that Stacy is talking about going into is fabulous, absolutely wonderful. But for me, the portion of the program that Emily, I would feel comfortable with her seizure control at night and all that, they have like a bunch of beds in a room, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so, and for me, the most shocking thing was, it was literally a bed in the middle of the room. So where's their stuff? And like, they have no privacy, they don't have stuffed animals, they don't, you know. So there are options, and we already have a plan in place. Like, if I die tomorrow, here's an option. It's not the best, but we're also working with other families to develop residential options for adults with disabilities and with Dravet specific. And there is another survey for that. And so we are trying to research options, because she can talk more. She has a great situation. But for
Nothing's great.
no, but I mean, if we could pool our resources, and you know, the state is so like, I don't need Emily to be watched by one person one-on-one all night. One person could watch 6 people, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, there are possible solutions, and that's what we're working towards with those surveys and stuff. But she does have a pretty good solution.
Well, again, it depends on where you live and all of that. In terms of seizure care, backing up to that question, as part of the transition, you'll have a plan of care that will be created. And I mean, you really have to advocate to have seizure monitoring and seizure training. And if they say no, it doesn't matter. You can, again, maybe it's where you live, but so Grace's vocational agency. So some people have day programs. Is that what it is? Day programs. And Grace only happens to work with a vocational agency. She actually has one-on-one support the whole time. And the seizure part was an issue, but it was in her care of plan of care, and so, you know, kind of by law, they had to provide that. So it kind of, some of that is that advocate hat that we have to wear. In terms of housing, again, this is a really loaded topic, but in terms of the night oversight, we didn't want a group home situation for Grace. We wanted more of a family home. We didn't want the total medical model. So the group of families, you know, needed support. And in Madison, there happens to be an organization, a company that was created by a guy who has an adult sibling who has profound disabilities. And he created this company called Night Owl. And it's modeled after kind of the 911 model, where there's like a call center and then responders. So I'll give Grace's housing as an example. Depending upon which apartment and which girl, Night Owl will come and trick it out. So in her case, she has an MFIT pad. She has fall pad on the ground. She has movement monitors, alarms on the doors, all these things. And then in the other apartments, let's say somebody has an eating issue, they'll put monitors on the refrigerator, all those kind of things. If one of those alarms goes off, for example, the call center is notified. They triage that call, either if the person happens to be developmentally capable to talk through it, or with the care provider that's there. They triage it, and then if needed, the responder goes out on the call. And they say, you know, they'll be there within 5 minutes. And I know what you're all thinking, well, 5 minutes is great, except if you have seizures and need support. So with a lot of creative discussion, we arranged that the group of responders for Night Owl is actually based out of the apartment building, Grace's apartment building. So Grace happens to only now, as she's gotten older, she now only has seizures at night. And so now, when she has a seizure at night, the responder is literally in the building. So it's just one kind of creative way that a really tough situation could have a solution.
So the care plan, I'm assuming, is like an IEP for our younger kids.
Pretty much. It's that like Bible document that has to, by law, be created before your child leaves the 18 to 21 program. In Wisconsin.
And who helps
and
with
some
that?
Other states.
Is it the school system?
It's the transition team, yes. So first in Wisconsin, when your child is a senior, they do a transition plan. That's basically like the IEP going into, you know, where the person is right now, the goals, all of that, based on outcomes. And then the 18 to 21 program, you know, is the next phase of that. And then they create that plan of care that transitions them into the adult system. And like Janice said, there's this kind of acronym people feel like, or like feeling like, okay, you hit the adult system and you go off the cliff. But I would like to argue that if we take as many baby steps as we can along the way, it doesn't have to be a cliff. I mean, it is scary and all of that, but all of a sudden you start to find these little resources like this whole community, and it helps.
Can I just add one more thing to that? Just so for those of you asking about seizures, this is a broader statement, but I do believe that as these Dravet children get older, their seizures patterns often do change, and I think we all, at least, and so Stacy also has seizures, also mostly at night, and I know that I've talked to a number of parents here. So for those of you who are really concerned about that, which I appreciate, just, you know, that is a concern, but it'll change over time. I'm not saying everybody's will. So we don't worry as much about Stacy having a seizure when she's in her day program. That's not to say never. She has had a seizure at that day program. The second thing I'd say is for those of us who do have adults, they do have seizures. I don't believe many of them are over 5 minutes. I don't know if that's true. Okay, so I just want to see if these panelists agreed with that. Was that the same for Emily? Up to 5. Yeah, so I'm not saying, so then the need for rescue medicine is potentially just not as significant. So those are just things that you might not feel you could get there, but I'm just saying it. And then there's a risk. You know, I mean, Stacy hasn't needed a rescue med in a really, really long time. We have plans for it, but we just, you know, you just have to, you have to balance that with the options available to you and what you think is the right thing.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh yeah, absolutely.
You guys are great. Thank you so much. I would encourage you to send your children to an overnight camp. For those of you who are under 16, the Center for Courageous Kids in Kentucky is a wonderful camp, and you can stay in Nashville and be close by. We used to have Dravet family weekends at the Center for Courageous Kids. Victory Junction in North Carolina is another great camp. I'm in Tennessee, and my son has been going to an overnight camp since he was 7 years old for a week. And there's a full-time nurse. He's had seizures there. Last summer, instead of walking through the bubble machine on the grass, he ran through it and face planted and ended up in an ER in Cookeville and then later at Vanderbilt with multiple facial fractures. But they handled it.
Oh yeah, I want Emily to go to camp.
But that was Brian's problem because of his impulsivity and not thinking about the consequences. But and then the University of Tennessee puts on a week-long camp for kids from 7 to 21 in the spring, where they're matched up with one-on-one with a university student. It's done through the Therapeutic Recreation Department at UT. It's an awesome program, but they realized once the kids aged out at 21, what happens to the adults? There's nothing for them. So they started a retreat, Thursday night to Sunday afternoon in the fall. It's at the same camp, and again, it's one-on-one students from the university. There's several full-time nurses there. They administer the meds. They even do feeding tubes at this particular camp. But you've got to talk to other parents. You need to look at what's out there and be willing to take some risks. I mean, the first time I sent Brian to overnight camp, I wanted a phone call every day. But now it's like, I can't wait for him to go, and he can't wait to go either. So, there's a lot out there. Just start researching and look. Oh, and also, we do adaptive snowboarding in Beach Mountain, North Carolina, and they do adaptive skiing. There's the Ability Resource Center in Utah that does snow sports for kids and adults with disabilities. Get on the web and look out there and challenge your sports. If you haven't got your kid in Challenger Baseball or Challenger Sports, look into that. And one of the things that I found out is that a lot of times, and I'm hearing this from you, it's parents who get together and organize the special bowling opportunities for your kids and talk to the bowling alleys, and they give you a great rate. And if you want your kid to be involved in Special Olympics after they age out of school, you need to contact the regional Special Olympics person so that you get the information about the dates and the time for registration and stuff, so you can still keep your kid involved in it even after they age out in school.
Thank you. No, that's great. And I would add to that, if you're nervous about camp, a lot of our specialists in Dravet syndrome actually will work at the epilepsy camps over the summer. So for instance, Dr. Miller and his nurse Pat always do Camp Boggy Creek in Florida. Kelly Knupp's team does something in Colorado. So honestly, even though you're nervous about it, you're going to have the top specialists there that could help them if anything happened. So did anyone else have any questions?
I will say one thing about the programs and stuff. Emily has always been active at summer camps since she was 3 years old. So we sent her to camp, day camp in the summer. So from 3 to 6 we sent her, and they administered her medicine, and everything was great. And she was having tons of really long seizures, and they did a great job. But at age 6, they would no longer administer any rescue medications. And that has continued on because the laws changed. The insurance companies got involved, and they didn't want the risk of having to administer seizure medications. And so I haven't found a program that will administer seizure medications for Emily to be in. Just like a special recreation is specifically what I'm talking about. And so just something to consider that, yes, they can go, and I was allowed to go and sit there every day to give her medicine, but they would not.
Well, originally we had planned to do a little bit of a breakout where you could kind of chat with your neighbors, discuss the checklist, and we ate into that a little bit with questions. So I think we can give you about 5 minutes if you want to talk, hear from the other parents that are in the room. Also happy to take more questions. So as you're talking, if anything pops up, just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic over to you. Oh, hold on. Yes.
I just have a small, addition suggestion. So I would think in the age 15 category, it would be helpful to add a bullet point for military families or Department of State maybe to review what their adult children are eligible for with military benefits. Because if the ship sails on that, you lose out. So. I'm happy to help with that.
That would be great. We'll take you up on it. Thank you. Thank you. That's why we need everyone's voices involved, because we're all coming to the table with different experiences and perspectives. So thank you. All right, great. Well, we'll let you guys talk for a few minutes. If anything comes up that you want to share with the group or ask questions, just let us know.